or Lady Middleton's head, and therefore very little leisure was ever given for a general chat, and none at all for particular discourse. They met for the sake of eating, drinking, and laughing together, playing at cards or consequences, or any other game that was sufficiently noisy. One or two meetings of this kind had taken place, without affording Eleanor any chance of engaging Lucy in private, when Sir John called at the cottage one morning to beg, in the name of charity, that they would all dine with Lady Middleton that day, as he was obliged to attend the club at Exeter, and she would otherwise be quite alone, except her mother and the two Miss Steeles. Eleanor, who foresaw a fairer opening for the point she had in view, in such a party as this was likely to be, more at liberty among themselves under the tranquil and well-bred direction of Lady Middleton than when her husband united them together in one noisy purpose, immediately accepted the invitation. Margaret, with her mother's permission, was equally compliant, and Marianne, though always unwilling to join any of their parties, was persuaded by her mother, who could not bear to have her seclude herself from any chance of amusement, to go likewise. The young ladies went, and Lady Middleton was happily preserved from the frightful solitude which had threatened her. The insipidity of the meeting was exactly such as Eleanor had expected. It produced not one novelty of thought or expression, and nothing could be less interesting than the whole of their discourse, both in the dining-parlour and drawing-room. To the latter the children accompanied them, and while they remained there she was too well convinced of the impossibility of engaging Lucy's attention to attempt it. They quitted it only with the removal of the tea-things. The card-table was then placed, and Eleanor began to wonder at herself for having ever entertained a hope of finding time for conversation at the park. They all rose up in preparation for a round game.
"I am glad,"
said Lady Middleton to Lucy,
"you are not going to finish poor little Anna Maria's basket this evening, for I am sure it must hurt your eyes to work filigree by candlelight. And we will make the dear little love some amends for her disappointment to-morrow, and then I hope she will not much mind it."
This hint was enough. Lucy recollected herself instantly, and replied,
"Indeed, you are very much mistaken, Lady Middleton. I am only waiting to know whether you can make your party without me, or I should have been at my filigree already. I would not disappoint the little angel for all the world, and if you want me at the card-table now, I am resolved to finish the basket after supper."
"You are very good. I hope it won't hurt your eyes. Will you ring the bell for some working candles? My poor little girl would be sadly disappointed, I know, if the basket was not finished to-morrow. For though I told her it certainly would not, I am sure she depends upon having it done."
Lucy directly drew her work-table near her, and reseated herself with an alacrity and cheerfulness which seemed to infer that she could taste no greater delight than in making a filigree basket for a spoilt child. Lady Middleton proposed a rubber of Casino to the others. No one made any objection but Marianne, who, with her usual inattention to the forms of general civility, exclaimed,
"Your ladyship will have the goodness to excuse me. You know I detest cards. I shall go to the pianoforte. I have not touched it since it was tuned."
And without farther ceremony she turned away and walked to the instrument. Lady Middleton looked as if she thanked heaven that she had never made so rude a speech.
"Marianne can never keep long from that instrument, you know, ma'am,"
said Eleanor, endeavouring to smooth away the offence.
"And I do not much wonder at it, for it is the very best toned pianoforte I ever heard."
The remaining 5 were now to draw their cards.
"Perhaps,"
continued Eleanor,
"if I should happen to cut out, I may be of some use to Miss Lucy Steele in rolling her papers for her, and there is so much still to be done to the basket that it must be impossible, I think, for her labour singly to finish it this evening. I should like the work exceedingly if she would allow me a share in it."
"Indeed, I shall be very much obliged to you for your help,"
cried Lucy,
"for I find there is more to be done to it than I thought there was. and it would be a shocking thing to disappoint dear Anna Maria after all."
"Oh, that would be terrible indeed,"
said Miss Steele.
"Dear little soul, how I do love her!"
"You are very kind,"
said Lady Middleton to Eleanor.
"and as you really like the work, perhaps you will be as well pleased not to cut in till another rubber, or will you take your chance now?"
Eleanor joyfully profited by the first of these proposals, and thus by a little of that address which Marianne could never condescend to practice, gained her own end, and pleased Lady Middleton at the same time. Lucy made room for her with ready attention, and the two fair rivals were thus seated side by side at the same table, and with the utmost harmony engaged in forwarding the same work. The pianoforte, at which Marianne, wrapped up in her own music and her own thoughts, had by this time forgotten that anybody was in the room besides herself, was luckily so near them that Miss Dashwood now judged she might safely, under the shelter of its noise, introduce the interesting subject, without any risk of being heard at the card table. End of chapter 23.